Well, as is the case, I am blessed to know a lot of amazing people. And today I get to sit with Mr. Tanner Chambers.
Thank you.
Drove up here from Portland. That's not exactly on your way to Safeway.
No, especially not when I-5 is closed.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Turned into a circuitous route.
A little bit.
I am just loving that we get to do this because A, you're just a close friend, but B, having the privilege of watching your journey in so many things over the last many years, it's an inspiring journey, watching you grow and stretch and become truly on top of so many things. I can't wait for the takeaways people are going to get out of this.
Thank you.
Because it's not one little category. There's like 4 or 5 categories we're going to hit. And I think that's what's cool about this is that you go deep in a lot of ways. And so let's start with, Tanner, being raised, those initial influences that, of your parents, of what's surrounding you, of what your first lessons of believe this. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I was blessed with an amazing family, really close-knit kind of core group family. When I was a little kid, my grandma Bonnie, she got divorced and moved in with us. So for as long as I can remember, it was my parents, my brother Sean, grandma Bonnie, those 4, especially when I was little, it was that kind of core group, and we did like everything together. Hmm. And, at one point we lived in a cabin with no running water in the mountains, and I would say that I had animals on me. Well, those were ticks. And we lived in a mobile home park. Things were, things were tight. My parents would share one beer from the gas station a week. That was their treat that they could afford.
Right.
And I guess the reason I start there is it instilled a belief that I still have, that this sort of feeling that as long as we're together as a family, as long as we're happy, as long as you're with your loved ones, like the rest of it is sort of bullshit. And so it sort of it's not that I don't want to be successful financially, I do, but it sort of set that permanently at second tier.
Right.
And I feel like that's served me well. And in some ways, maybe I've done, grown slower than I would like, or done things, you could say perhaps maybe I could grind more, but it's like we were just talking about with golf, like I've golfed less lately because I've got Jet there with me and I don't want to leave him on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And so everything kind of stems from this philosophy of like being together as a family and being very tight knit. And so to this day, we're all thankfully still here and healthy, and we're all still very involved in each other's lives, and we talk all the time. And so I don't know, it's kept me, I guess, grounded. It's kept my priorities straight. Maybe I could I want to push myself harder in some ways, but that's kind of where everything starts for me.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about your brother, Sean.
Yeah. So my brother Sean, technically,
because you guys are very different, but very connected
at the same time. Yeah. Right. The joke in the family is that we're Frasier and Niles, for anyone that liked the sitcom Frasier, with me being Niles. And so technically Sean's my half brother. We have the same mom, but different biological dads. Mm-hmm. But my dad raised Sean from the time Sean was like 4, before I was born, and adopted Sean. And he calls my brother Sean calls Dad.
Right.
So in no way is he actually my half brother.
Right.
But we look a little different, and we do different things. We both grew up on the farm together. And we always had a good relationship. We were always close. But after my parents took the job they have now and started moving around, I moved more towards the city away from the farm, and Sean went farther into ag, about as far as you could get into deep eastern Oregon and rural Idaho, managing cattle farms.
Right.
Which is where I'm sure we'll get to. That's where our business sort of ended up kind of converging again in the future. You wouldn't think cows and real estate could reconverge, but in fact, they are intertwined.
In fact, I can't wait to tell that story.
Yeah. And right. So Yeah, Sean is one of my closest friends, which I think I'm lucky to say, given the fact that he's my brother, but he's also one of my closest friends. We're both sort of like each other's constant cheerleader. We like to push each other. We're going to do like a big challenge hike this summer and try and do like 20 miles a day for 10 days, not on trails, like in the backcountry.
Wow.
I wouldn't necessarily do that for fun, but with Sean, it's not necessarily competition. There's no like toxicity, but it's this kind of healthy desire to push each other, life, business, health, all these things.
Sounds like heaven.
It's one of the best relationships that in my world, amongst the best ones.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's how many years older than you?
5 years.
5 years older.
So I'm 31, he's 36.
Yeah. 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 That's awesome. And your roots, you have some American Indian blood in you.
Yes. Yeah. Cowlitz Indian tribe in Southwest Washington. Yeah.
Share that?
He does. So
Yes.
we're both, the Indian part of our family came through our mom's dad.
Uh-huh.
There was multiple different tribes of Indians through multiple grandparents, actually. Mm-hmm. But our most potent line, I guess, and the line that connects us to the tribe that we're actually members of, a federally recognized tribe, the Cowlitz tribe in Washington State, that came through our mom. So we're both members of that tribe. Our kids are both members of that tribe.
Mm-hmm. And that association, let's start with your mom. Does that go deep in her commitment?
It does, yeah. I'd say it's more our Native American heritage. In some ways, we grew up a little bit detached from the tribe. We've tried to rectify that now and move back in some ways and give back to the tribe more. But more spiritually, if that makes sense, sort of a philosophy of the way my mom does things align much more with kind of Native American culture. Being close with kind of nature being your church, if that makes sense, not to offend anyone that, doesn't think that thinks those are two different things, but, family, being together, your village, being in nature, that being tied in spiritually in the way that my mom does everything in her life is very important to her. And it was important to how we were raised.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love your mom too, by the way. I've had her at Power Players and just really, she's a very wise person.
She is, yeah, definitely. Very sort of soft-spoken in some ways, gentle.
Takes it all in, but you can tell she's processing and thinking.
Yeah. Always, yeah. I talk to my mom pretty much every day. And constant source of like kind of steady compassion and advice.
Yes. What, if you were to look at sort of like your wiring harness today, if you were to put things in sort of three categories, these things that you've completely embraced and adopted as an adult and ratified, you just, I believe these things.
Right.
And then those that you might have had to remodel or even replace.
Right.
Tell me about you as an adult as it relates to your initial hardwiring.
Yeah. So I feel like I was lucky in a lot of ways that way too. My parents were very, they wanted us to find our own beliefs. They weren't people who tended to push beliefs on us. Mm-hmm. Obviously there were boundaries, but for the most part, they encouraged us to find our own belief system in some ways, which I think was a big benefit. But also from a very early stage, and I know I've shared this phrase with you before that my dad always said, and I think it's a quote from someone, but one of the very first things I remember my dad saying consistently to me as a young man was that if your mind can conceive it, your mind can achieve it. Mm-hmm. And so from a very early age, I was instilled with this belief in myself, this confidence that if I could think of it as something that I could do, that I could then do it.
Right.
Like there wasn't anything like, there was no, that's not for you. That's something that rich people do. That's something that athletes do. There wasn't any of that. It was like, if you think you can do it, then of course you can go do it.
Right.
I feel like that's a pretty sweet setup right from the start.
It is.
The confidence and arrogance sometimes go hand in hand, but my mom kept me more grounded there. So I feel like I've done a good job of not letting that, become like a big head problem.
Yeah.
But I was raised with that right from the start. The other thing with our family, you know, we have a lot of what we would call chosen family, another Native American thing. You know, your village, it takes a village. I'm sure everyone's heard that phrase. And so something else that I was always told growing up was, you know, the phrase would have been, we'll back you all the way to the ground, you know, which was to say that even if you're in the wrong, you know, well, we'll talk about that in private, but in public, you know, we've got your back. We're going to support you. In fact, I remember making a joke once to my dad, like, I don't know what I'd have to do to have you guys stop talking to me. Like, I guess I'd have to like kill someone. And without missing a beat, my dad was like, well, I'd come visit you in jail. And so I guess just knowing, I guess it's a privilege to have the ability to fail or to feel comfortable, like to be given the chance to try something and fail.
That's a great thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so having this confidence that I had people behind me that believed in me and loved me, I know that was a huge blessing to not from the start feel like I had a chip on my shoulder, which isn't a bad thing to have a chip on your shoulder, but I didn't have this me against the world attitude.
Right.
I had people there to
I'll show you attitude.
Yeah, there was none of that sort of negative bias for me. It was coming from a place of like love and support.
Right.
You know, like, hey, if we all go bankrupt and we end up back in that cabin with no running water,
right.
You're like, well, at least we'll be together.
Right. Could be worse.
We took a shot. So yeah, those are core tenets, I feel like, of my upbringing, was that sort of closeness as a family. In fact, 2 of my 3 best friends growing up were Jewish, and I spent a lot of time with them. And anyone who spent a lot of time with Jewish people, you sort of see that this commonality of everyone's in everyone's business, and you talk to your mom all the time. And so I kind of like to joke that my family's sort of Jewish that way, where just everyone's involved in everyone's business, which I guess has its ups and downs. You know, there's no privacy. Like, if you tell my grandma something, you may as well, you know, tweet the New York Times. there's no privacy at all. So me and my wife, Emma, you know, we'll have discussions like, is this something that it has to be just between me and her? Because if anyone else knows, the whole family knows.
Yeah.
But that also creates a lot of shared bonding and support system too. So
yeah. Yeah, hard, you know, when people's heart's in the right place, it's definitely not purposeful malice. It's just the way they are.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Huh. Well, what about beliefs that you've had to remodel a little bit?
Yeah, there's probably some things, you know, when you've lived in raised, as my parents did, raised kids in a cabin in the hills with no water and sharing 1 beer a week, there's some scarcity. I think, and my parents have worked, you know, my mom's a power player too now. So my parents have worked to overcome those things too. You know, my dad had a really successful phase of his life that before I was born sort of crumbled. And then we were very, you know, destitute, and then became successful again. And I think there's a little bit of protectionism and scarcity, you know, losing it, getting it back and hoping not to lose it again.
Right. Right. Kind of laying on the ball and hoping the clock will run out.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, working on a little bit of like scarcity mindset, I think. Some traditional beliefs around real estate, actually. You know, my mom was a standard buyer's agent for years, and really successful buyer's agent in the sense that she sold a ton of houses.
Yeah.
But it was very much the, like, you know, you can only get so many loans to buy from a bank, you know, before you clock out. You've got to have your 25% down. You've got to have this, you've got to have that. Like, you know, you wait and you save up, and then hopefully you get a big enough down payment, and maybe you buy a rental, and then you wait and you save up, and then maybe someday you can buy another rental. And so again, just sort of traditional mindsets around things that aren't necessarily bad. But, you know, you come into the real estate game thinking that things fit in this neat little box, and you don't have any exposure to this wider entrepreneurial world. And so that's taken remodeling to be like, no, you don't. To get to this point now where I still struggle with learning. Of course, there's a lot more I need to learn. I've made mistakes. I'm sure I'll make more. But one of the beliefs that I've firmly managed to reinstall and re-upload into my hard drive is, I remember someone saying something about, you know, I found a deal that I wanted to buy, and someone said, how are you, you know, where are you going to get the money for that? And I was almost confused, because I'm like, oh, I don't need money to buy a house. What are you talking about? And I know, just saying that, some people will be like, what is wrong with this guy?
Right.
But I've understood, like, completely now that I fully believe that it's a product game.
Right.
Like, if I find a good deal, the money's the easy part. Finding a good deal is really hard.
Right.
A truly good deal, but not just like a flip that could make someone 30 grand.
Deal structuring is how we handle the money issue.
Yeah.
We can handle the money issue with the proper deal structure.
Yeah.
Easily. But you're right. The finding of it becomes the biggest challenge. Well, once you've figured that out too, then you're on your way.
Yeah. Once you've signed the contract, you're like, okay, like now it's just a matter of getting my ducks in a row for closing. Like hard part's done.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah. It's a little bit thinner, like getting like building a new home, right? Once you have the permits in hand, it's the building of it is almost anticlimactic. That's the easy part.
Right. That makes sense.
That's about 40 phone calls well timed and there, it's done.
Right.
But the getting of the permit, you're going to the black hole wondering if you'll ever get out the back of the building, and so I think that, again, that's a perspective, but that's a good mental shift, a professional shift of seeing possibility in a different way there.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the biggest shifts for me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll dive into the profession. I want to go back to a chapter that you and your bride, which she's such a great gal, you are expecting a baby, this new little boy. You're excited, first one, and take it from there.
Yeah,
because it's like it starts a chapter that had us all on our knees for a long time. But I want you to tell the story of your son.
Yeah, it's a little jet man. He has two middle names, so he's Jensen Elliott Thomas, and early on we figured out that that's spelled Jet. Mm-hmm. So everyone in our world, of course, calls him Jet. Mm-hmm. And so spring of 2020, and we didn't do this on purpose, but of course he's kind of labeled, a lockdown baby. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But yeah, spring of 2020, we find out that we're expecting. And so to start with, everything went pretty normally. We were living in a nice little condo in Irvington in Portland. Put our first seller financing deal under contract in June. So at that point, we were only maybe 3-4 months along, if that. Now knowing we're expecting, originally we had bought that or intended to buy that house as a rental property, but it was 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. We're expecting, like, great, we can move into this one. And we did. And so to start with, everything was fine. Like up to the 20-week point, we did our 20-week checkup like everyone does. Everything looked fine. Emma was fine. And I actually left to do Power Players. I think it might have been Coeur d'Alene.
Mm-hmm. I think it was.
And so I got back from Coeur d'Alene on Tuesday after I spent an extra day, as I always do, to get some sleep. Pro tip for Power Players. And so I think I got back on a Tuesday. Emma was feeling off, and on a whim, for some reason, had ordered a blood pressure machine. I think because her dad had a stroke. Was feeling off, took her blood pressure. It was a little high. Went to get her checked out on Thursday. So I've been home 2 days. Thursday night, they admitted her. At this point, we were 25 weeks along. And so there was really high blood pressure for Emma. They were starting to worry that she had what's called preeclampsia, like pregnancy-induced high blood pressure. And so now we're into August at this point. And so she gets admitted on Thursday, towards the end of August, I suppose it was, because he was born on August 30th. So admitted to the hospital Thursday, emergency C-section Sunday morning at 5:30. Which was the most terrifying time of my entire life. We were there at the hospital for just a couple days, and the goal was to keep the blood pressure down, put her on some baby-safe blood pressure meds, stabilize things, and then hopefully she could come home. They even said that if they had to, like if they could get Jet to term, that they would keep her there for the full 15 weeks in the hospital. So at the time, I also had lucked out. We had to get our own insurance that year. And for whatever reason, I went for like the Rolls Royce plan with like $500 maximum out of pocket that cost a fortune every month. Boy, was that good timing. I think through all this, we paid like $1,000 or $1,500. But so So Jet's born Sunday morning, and the doctor had sat us down the day before in case this happened, saying that like the odds aren't great, like we're 25 weeks into pound, like we're right on the edge of what's possible here. And if he is born, the odds aren't amazing. If he's born and he survives, we don't know what shape he'll be in, what sort of permanent problems there might be.
Right.
And so he's born Sunday morning. Emma's knocked out from the drugs, of course. He comes out very upset that they woke him up at 5:30 in the morning, which was a good sign. He still gets mad if you do that.
Yeah.
And so they get him stabilized and in his pod, and they've got a bunch of tests they need to run. Emma's knocked out from the drugs. They get her in a room and she's asleep. And so they told me, like, there's nothing for you to do if you want to go get some breakfast. Like, we've got to run tests on Jensen. Emma's asleep. So I remember, it was like a nurse's suggestion that I go get some food. And I ended up just sort of driving in aimless circles around Portland for maybe 2 hours, not just completely dazed.
Right.
Like not knowing what just happened, completely derailed from the normal arc of like expecting.
Right.
And so I ended up going and sitting down at a random breakfast place, I think, have some breakfast again in a daze. Ended up, for whatever reason, just kind of calling a good friend. And they were very kind and they came immediately to come sit with me and talk about it. It was actually our mutual friend, Chris Botero. Mm-hmm. And I think he brought Amanda with him, if I remember right, but I was in a daze. And so anyway, that's kind of the highlight reel of how Jet came into the world. From that point forward, it was a lot of firsts. They were like, okay, well, now we need him to poop because that will tell us that his intestines actually work.
Right.
We need to see are his lungs going to open? We have to give him surfactant. Then he got a staph infection as a micropreemie, which is also terrible. And
say how much he weighed at birth.
He weighed just over 1 pound, and he was like 25 weeks and 3 days old. And he actually, I guess babies tend to lose a little bit of weight fluid wise after they're born. So he dipped just under a pound after birth. His diaper would fit like my thumb, the diaper they gave us for him.
I remember, Tanner, the picture that I first saw, and somebody, I assume it was you, but I'm not sure.
I think it was actually a nurse. Yeah.
A nurse had their hand out like this, holding this baby, and from the wrist, this into the hand to the fingertips, the hand was bigger than the baby.
Yeah.
I'm like,
didn't even seem possible.
Oh my gosh, it just didn't seem possible.
Yeah.
It's just like that big.
Thankfully, it's been long enough now I can talk about all this without getting too emotional.
Yeah, my gosh.
So yeah, everyone in our whole, like I said, our family's all very close. So everyone, friends and family, were terrified, like you said, praying night and day. The first 2 weeks were really touch and go. And then the wildfires, I don't know how many people might remember, Portland had terrible wildfires that summer.
Right.
There's a more spiritual part of me and my dad that wonders, like he was born at Kaiser, which isn't a bad hospital, but it's more of like a family medicine place. It's not really specialty. Yeah. Well, they were planning to keep him there for insurance purposes. Of course, they don't want to pay to send him to an outside hospital. And it was actually, the wildfires were getting too close to Clackamas, where he was, Happy Valley Clackamas in the Portland area. And the smoke from that was overwhelming the ventilation system.
In the hospital.
In the hospital. Oh, and so
that's right.
They, without telling us, and at the time we were very upset. In retrospect, and even within a couple of days, I think we acknowledged that this was great. We got a call, and they had warned us that there was a chance he may need to be moved, which is a terrifying prospect for this micro baby in an incubator.
Right, yeah.
They had warned us there was a chance they might need to move him. And so we get a phone call that at like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, which at the time was the worst thing in the world when our phone would ring for those first month or two.
Right.
Every single time our phone rang, your heart would sink into the pit of your stomach.
Right.
Because you don't know if it's that phone call.
Right.
And so we get a phone call at like 12:30, 1 in the morning, and the nurse says, okay, he's here and he's stable and he's safe and everything's good. And we were just like, he's where and he's what and he's who? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And so they had actually moved him from Sunnyside Clackamas, their NICU, to the Dornbecker NICU at OHSU. I think that ended up being a saving grace because that's one of the best facilities on the West Coast. Our insurance didn't cover that. That was just, it would because Kaiser sent him there, but that we couldn't get him there through our insurance.
Right.
Otherwise, that would have been the first choice. Of course, that's where you would want him. And so the level of care there was so much better, in our opinion, not to slander Kaiser, but that I really think it might have saved his life being transferred there. And it was the wildfires that pushed him. And so he was only maybe a week, 10 days old when they moved him. And from that point forward, it was still terrifying. But from then, to be honest, till now, 5 years, 4 years, 4.5 years later, it's just been uphill. Checking boxes and gaining weight and speech therapy and physical therapy. And they, like I said, they didn't know what shape he would come home in. We thought, he was on a ventilator for a while. He was on a feeding tube for a while. And it was like, is he going to come home in a wheelchair attached to pumps and stuff? Like, is he going to have permanent lifelong disabilities? We're glad he's here. And what's the deal going to be? They sent him home on just a little bit of nasal oxygen, like you see, maybe COPD patients have, which was a miracle by itself. He was drinking from a bottle at that point, also a miracle. He got off the oxygen within 6 months, which was also crazy. So long story short, he's a little over 4 years old now, 4.5 years old. He's a little bit small. He's a little bit behind developmentally. He's still in speech therapy. They're probably going to discharge him from PT. They don't think there's much more they can help him with. And he doesn't have any official diagnosis of anything beyond a developmental delay. He's happy. He's healthy. He's hilarious. He's sweet. We have so much fun together, me and Emma and him and the whole family.
Tell me about his vocabulary. Is he able to, he's learning sentences right now.
Learning words and starting to learn sentences. But that's really started to take hold with speech, I'd say, just since last summer, maybe the last 6 months or so. His new favorite word is purple, and he says it in a much cuter fashion than I do. But he's starting to string together 2 to 3 words now.
Right.
He's turned into a mina bird where he's really good at copying us now, which is helping him learn more and more, of course. And so, beyond and he still has some developmental delays with food. He drinks a lot of formula still and goes to occupational therapy for food and is working on getting onto normal food, which will help with the speech because the muscles are tied together. But he's really changed a lot in the last 6 months, and it just seems to be kind of like that bell curve is really speeding up. And so we're at this point now, I almost offended one of his doctors, to be honest, because they said something about his delay, or I forget exactly the context of it. And I sort of looked at them in my moment of candor and was like, he's happy and he's healthy. The rest of this is sort of bullshit. And I meant that sort of lighthearted. Right. And genuine, and the doctor was a little offended.
Right.
But that's how I look at it. It was like, we didn't even know if he was going to come home.
Well, yeah. Okay.
And now we're talking about speech.
Right, exactly. Right. Well, this is that perspective thing, right? It's a little bit like the cabin with no running water, that when you've seen something like this, that a nice condo with 2 bedrooms seems like palatial. Yeah. Well, this place of holding vigil day after day that he would just make it.
Yeah, 151 days straight, by the way, in the NICU. Every day we would go. We weren't allowed to stay overnight because, again, this was the heart of COVID.
Yeah.
So from August 30th, 2020, when he was born, to January of 2021, we spent 151 days driving back and forth to Dornbecker and, Kaiser for 2 weeks, and then the rest of the time, Dornbecker. And so that was a lot of time and a lot of driving because we couldn't stay there with him, which was also painful, not being able to, having to adhere to visitor hours during COVID and wear masks and all those things. So perspective change. We actually did get, and I've tried to think about this for other areas of life, one of the all-time pieces of sage advice that I've ever gotten.
Sage, I like that.
Early on in Jet's, I think it was within the first 3 days after Jet was born. And this was at Kaiser. There was an older nurse there who was a really nice lady. And I feel bad I forget her name, but she pulled us aside, just me and Emma, before we went in to see Jet that day. And she said, like, hey, like, this is going to sound counterintuitive, which I know is also a word you like. Mm-hmm. And she said, you know, you're going to feel guilty. Everyone feels like the more time they spend here, like the better parent they are. And she's like, I've seen people have mental breakdowns, lose their jobs, go bankrupt because they just can't leave this room. And she's like, I understand that. She's like, but it's not the best version of you for him. And so the crux of her advice was, she said, I think I'll never forget the wording. Her wording was, you need to find your marathon pace. She was like, figure out a schedule that you can do for months and months on end that won't burn you out, and then stick to that, even if it makes you feel a little selfish. So obviously for those 6 months, I want to say I didn't do much work. We actually bought 2 houses, but I sort of put things on the back burner a little bit. And we figured out this schedule, me and Emma, that was completely detached from normal day jobs. Thank God she's a stay-at-home mom and I'm an entrepreneur, self-employed. So we would get a good night's sleep. We wouldn't even set an alarm. We'd just sleep as much as we could. We'd go get brunch together. We'd go to the hospital and we'd visit Jet. We'd spend a good chunk of the day there. We'd leave, we'd go home, we'd refresh, we'd go out and have dinner, or have dinner at home, either one. And then we'd go back and we'd see him in the evening, and then repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat for 151 days. But
so this nurse should write a book on, like, life, right?
Yeah.
You know, that it's the marathon pace and the consistency of that pace it's almost like the tortoise and the hare. Get that pace, be consistent with it, and that will end up winning the race.
Yeah, that can apply to literally everything. Like, even in my own personal world, I've grown slower than my own personal standards would like. Our family business has grown slower than I would like. I have high standards for myself. I'm impatient. But at the same time, I've been in this now long enough. I've been around long enough. I met you in 2018. Even in 7 years, I've seen people burn bright and hot and then drop off, even in just 7 years, where they came out and they passed me real quick. And I was like, man, that was impressive. What am I doing wrong? Mm-hmm. But it was too hot and bright, and then they're all of a sudden the next thing they're gone, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like you said, at least I'm still here.
Sparkler.
At least I'm still here plugging away.
Yeah. Well, I have a friend that is dealing with a really challenging situation with an elderly parent, and in the discussion, just even like 2 weeks ago, I said, you need to set yourself up as if this were a marathon.
Right.
And in a marathon, you know, your hydration along the way, your eating along the way.
Right.
That this isn't a sprint.
Right.
And
you can sprint out to a lead if you want, but it's not going to last.
And die if you. So it's just, I just can feel what this gal is saying, but of course this makes a marathon look real easy. That's right. Over in a day. This thing, 151 days of just finding a pace and trying to take care of yourself to be able to be your best for him.
Right.
Right. That's wise advice. Well, I just before we started, we had a little lunch. I saw some of the updated pictures of Jet, and he's this rambunctious boy and taking it by storm, and so
it's amazing. People, if someone listening that has no idea who he is saw him in public, the only thing they would get wrong, I think, is they would just think he's a little younger than he is. Mm-hmm. You know, they might guess that he's 2.5 or something because of his size and his vocabulary.
Right.
But they would have no other inclination that there's anything wrong in any way.
No.
Which, from where we started, is such a blessing that I can't even
Oh my gosh!
Makes you feel bad. Like, this is gonna. I don't know if this sounds bad or not, but I like to think there's been a few times in my life meeting Jeff, which led to meeting you, the parents and family that I have, Jet surviving. Like, I've won the lottery multiple times.
Yeah.
And so it makes me think about like, I feel like if I prayed to win an actual lottery, that I would deserve to just get like bitch slapped. It's like, if I was the creator of heaven and earth.
Now you're getting greedy.
Yeah. If I was the creator of heaven and earth and gave you this much stuff and you're praying for money,
right.
I'd just slap you across the face. So I guess more perspective changes.
I like that perspective. That's there's a parenthetical that I think on quite often, and it's actually in the book of Romans in the Bible, and it what Paul wanted to say, he was going to really lay it on pretty thick, real direct. But before the parenthetical starts out with eyes wide open to the mercies of God, comma.
Right.
And then he says, gets into it. It's like, let's remember,
right,
things have gone well for you,
right.
and let's grab that. Let's start there. And I think that's your comment of that when you start with gratitude, and
right.
and especially, Tanner, when you're taking it not metaphorically, when you're taking it hour by hour at times,
right?
You don't think about, well, I really pray that this kid will be 18 years old. No, I pray that he gets to 5 o'clock today.
Right. That's where we started.
It's where we started.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this night is a big night. So we're just praying he's here in the morning. Right. And you go, oh my God, I mean, this shit just got real. I mean,
right.
This is like, but when he did, okay, thank you for that. Now let's look at this, and that give us this day kind of thing
right.
really got real there, because it was, is he going to make it another day?
Yeah. Learning to go day by day.
Wow. I'm getting emotional because I
right.
just, I've got a lot of kids, but I've never once feared for any of their lives being ended for anything that they've ever been through. They've
right.
been through a lot, but never once have I said, oh my gosh, please make it through the day, to be here, to
right.
fight tomorrow, That was a new one for me, feeling even closer. I can't even imagine that. But
I think I've sort of locked a little bit of those emotions away.
Oh,
yeah, I will admit I struggle looking at photos from that time period, at least the first 3 to 6 months.
Oh my God.
I like to look at photos after January 2021.
Right.
The photos of the summer he was born, like I haven't gotten to a point yet where I can go back and appreciate them that much, because it brings all that back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I'm kind of reveling in this joyous time period right now.
Right.
And spending so much time with him.
As you should.
So it was, I'm sure at some point I probably need to reflect more on that time period, but for now I'm.
Well, it'll forever be called on as a perspective, for sure. Yeah. There's just no way that you'll ever forget that. And it will come and remind you at certain points that, my dad had a phrase that I'm not sure really where it began in his life, but we'd walk into some place and I go, what do you think? And he goes, well, I've been thrown out of better places. In other words, there was a perspective around a situation,
right?
Or he'd say, this isn't my worst Wednesday night, that kind of thing. And you go, okay, all right, well then it's all good, It's kind of like that cabin. It's like, no, we're good,
right?
We're together.
It's like if you go hunting in good weather. Like I've been hunting and not gotten anything in terrible weather. So who cares if I don't get anything? At least I'm hunting in nice weather.
Right.
I'm not getting rained on. Let's start there.
Right. Exactly. Well, we're kind of going forward, backwards. So let's go backwards a little bit. You mentioned Jeff, and I of course know who you're talking about, but I want you to dive into your real estate world and the beginnings of that as an entrepreneur.
Okay, yeah.
I know you mentioned your mom had her license forever, so
Yeah.
you were certainly familiar with the brokerage side of the world from your earliest memory. But from an entrepreneurial perspective, bring me into what started all that for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say real quick, open houses as a little kid are catastrophically boring. My mom used to call me her realtor in training. I would go with her because I didn't do well in daycare. Like I said, we spent all our time together for the most part. So she would just take me with her. She only ever lost one client in all those years that said they didn't like kids. And she was like, well, you can find another broker. And so, it was around real estate. My aunt is a realtor, very successful. My mom was an agent. Uncle was a lender. So it was in the world. But in terms of investment, I got my real estate license in 2016 and went to work for Anthony Castro, the owner of the broker network in Portland, still a good buddy of mine. And then was sort of drifting like that. Ended up, we parted ways, even though we're still friends. I took a job as an office manager for John L. Scott Real Estate and was like a transaction coordinator, office manager, and absolutely hated that. It was basically a desk job with none of the freedom that real estate normally comes with and all of the problems.
Right.
And so I heard this phrase once, this is slightly off topic, but I heard this phrase once that if you feel yourself sort of like directionless and drifting away from the world, and then a very obvious moment in time, you get nudged back in the right direction, that's sort of like divine intervention, which I believe in. Mm-hmm. And so this would have been 2018, summer of 2018. I was working for John L. Scott, sitting at my desk, bored out of my mind, hoping to find another job, like any job at that point would have been fine. And so I went to Craigslist. Everyone knows Craigslist. And I'm in their jobs forum under the heading real estate. And I'll never forget it. I see an ad pop up. It's as simple as this, but where this led to is just mind-boggling. But I see an ad pop up and it says, acquisitions assistant for busy real estate entrepreneur. And I was like, well, that sure sounds way more interesting than what I'm doing now. I've been a buyer's agent before. Like, I think I could do this. So I put a resume in, and it turned out that the busy real estate entrepreneur in question, who I know has been on the show before and is a great friend of both of ours, one of the all-time greats, Jeff Stevens. Mm-hmm. I had no idea who he was at the time. I didn't know who you were, didn't know who Jeff was, didn't know anything about him being an entrepreneur in the world of real estate. I just knew how to be a broker. And the math on this is kind of crazy. It turns out Jeff had a group interview before this and decided he didn't like anyone. So he had gotten a round of resumes.
This is surprising.
Got a round of resumes.
Jeff likes a lot of people, but he knows what he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And so as Jacqueline, his former property manager, told me this kind of explanation was they had a casting call and, invited maybe 15 people to a group interview and maybe 10 or 12 showed up and no one got invited to round 2. So they put the ad back out. Well, that's when I saw it. So I put my resume in. 15 people, I believe, got invited to a group interview. It was actually at Jeff's flip right in his backyard behind his house. Mm-hmm. He decided to do like a real-time project interview there. Mm-hmm. So 15 people were invited. So now who knows, maybe we're at like 30 applications total or something. I think 12 people RSVP'd, 8 people could be bothered to actually show up to what turned out to be like a life-changing opportunity.
About 33% don't even show up. Right.
So we get to 7 or 8 people actually show up, including me. I was there. 2 people got invited to the second round interview. Now the second round interview, Jeff held the first one at his flip. And it was like walls were missing. It was right in the heart of the action, which was awesome to see, in a great neighborhood that I already knew, which was great. So I could see like this guy's the real deal. Like he's got a flip in Alameda or Beaumont, right here off of Alberta. This is a beautiful craftsman. Like this is great. And so Jeff wanted the second round interview to be with his in-house property manager, Jacqueline. And so thankfully, me and Jeff connected well. I got invited to the second round with Jacqueline, along with one other person. And that lady, I didn't beat her out. She didn't bother to show up for the second round interview for what turned out to be a life-changing opportunity. And I did, so I got hired. And the first day on the job, and I'm glad Jeff has been on before me, the very first day we meet for breakfast, And then I think Jeff took me on a drive to like show me the history of his portfolio. I think that was the first day. Might get this out of order a touch, but we drive around and he's showing me buildings he owns. I hear the name Greg 4 or 5 times and I'm kind of like, who's Greg, But he shows me buildings he used to own, shows me buildings he currently owns, flips in progress, these different things. And I'm already like so amazed at the quality of location, the quality of building. Well, then the penny really drops. We go back to his office and the first thing he wants to teach me about his business is his game board. And so he sits me in his chair that he has, his nice comfortable chair, looking at said game board. And he starts trying to explain. And Jeff, he just dives in. He's a great teacher, but I was so new, and he's explaining, well, the pieces of paper are properties and the sticky notes are debt. And the red notes, that's debt we can't move. But the green notes, those are notes that we can move. And so we see we can move this debt here to open up equity here. And then we could use that equity to buy a new property over here. This all makes sense to me now. At the moment, all I knew was that I had fallen down the rabbit hole. The door had been opened. And I was like, I have to learn everything I can. That's what I knew.
Yeah.
I was like, I stumbled into it. Like I've won the lottery. Like, oh my God, this is it. This is like the thing. And so that was fall 2018 that I got hired by Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, if you're listening. It changed my life, and I'm very grateful to him for that. And I know I've told him that a few times, but I've seen people be around this stuff and somehow not be interested, not chase it, not want to learn. I've seen people even go to power players and then not implement the skills, which is just unfathomable to me. And so I met Jeff October 2018. By June 2019, I was in Orlando at Power Players. I'll never forget checking my account, flying to my first Power Players with an overdrawn checking account. And it's still overdrawn, but we have a bunch of houses now. And so it was a whirlwind, but it was amazing for me to meet a student first. I guess maybe I'm naturally skeptical, which isn't necessarily the best mindset. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I'm naturally sort of skeptical. It was perfect for me to meet Jeff and then get introduced to Bob and Chris and the students and see the buildings before I got a chance to be.
That proof was there.
The proof is in the pudding, right? I'm like, I meet these 3 guys, Chris Botero, Bob Boxler, Jeff Stevens. Obviously, I'm in the middle of Jeff's business, so I'm seeing the bird letters, I'm seeing the marketing, the meetings, the properties, and I'm seeing the location, the quality, the entrepreneurship, the deal structures. All of this is just...
How about the camaraderie between them as they're not competitors?
It's like a fraternity, The first time I met you, I'm sure you remember, it was actually the same flip I was interviewed in. It was at the finished product before it was going to go on the market. You just happened to be in town, I think, to speak somewhere. And Jeff wanted you to walk through and say, is there anything we should tweak before we actually hit the market?
Like the day before.
It was just a few days before. And so I think me and you and Bob and Jeff showed up just to say hi. Or you were with Bob, but Chris showed up just to say hi. We all went to dinner together. Sort of like I was talking about earlier with my brother being that constant push and cheerleader where there's no toxic competition. Well, to have all of a sudden access to many people like that I still have in my life, Jeff Stevens and Robert Boygia and Bob Boxler and Shona. Shona just started a meetup group. I'm going to go to that in a couple weeks. And it's just accountability. That's all it is. Invite only accountability. And, having access to this group of people that, I don't know, that want to, there's no scarcity. There's no competition. I mean, there is competition. Everyone wants to be the best, but it's not like that. It's like a rising tide raises all ships. We want to see each other. I mean, I think it's a philosophy,
Tanner, the opposite of which is I have valuable knowledge. I view you as competition. Therefore, I don't want to share with you what I think I know, what's working, because then you're going to do it and you're going to take opportunity away from me. That's scarcity mentality. The opposite, though, is this, that I'm obligated to share everything that is happening that is valuable and working and might help you to do better. I'm obligated to. That's my philosophy doesn't allow me to do it any other way. And that when I do that, that's when the world really opens up for me.
Right.
That holding on to something will create a situation where no more will come my way.
Right.
But by giving it away, that's abundance mentality is how I attract a life that is abundant.
Right. Like if you want the person above you to throw the ladder back down, you've got to turn around and throw it below you.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, that person's not going to send it down.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think that, rooted in that philosophy is what that's always been a hope of what I'm wanting to pass on. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes people think they're that.
Right.
And then they get a lot of abundance, and then they start trying to hang on to what they have.
Right.
And it's like, what got you here? What got you here is being open and giving, and empty your pockets of your resource to those to help people. But, this is where money really starts to tell a tale with people.
Well, and even like with, I've had people think that it's, like you said, the camaraderie and like the sharing of resources. I've had people think that it's weird or that I'm crazy, where like Robert, our good friend Robert, who was also on the show.
Yeah.
He needed funds for a project, and I said, hey, call this lender. Well, some people look at that and they're like, you're giving that guy a phone number for a lender?
Right.
And I don't mean U.S. Bank. I mean a person
people?
With money.
Right.
And they're like, why would you? Well, I'm like, well, one, the lender, I can't borrow all the lender's money. Like, they want to keep their money loaned out.
Yeah.
Two, they asked me, if you know a good person, keep me in mind. And three, like, it's Robert. Like, I want Robert to succeed. Of course, like, please call this person. Like, if, I'd be mad if you didn't.
Right. Yeah.
And that feeling of support is just unique.
Yeah.
I think in the power player community, it's different. It's on another level.
Well, I am so blessed to be, I look at myself as just a part of the community, and held accountable to the same thing we're all trying to do. And it's a awesome community.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
Awesome community. And I feel obligated to do my best to not only educate, but screen well.
Right.
To just, because I'm very protective of the family, as it were,
I know it's been 5, 6, 7 years. I can't remember exactly. And, I won't say the name because I don't want to slander anyone, but in all that time, there's only been one person where I decided that I needed to pick up the phone and call you and say, like, hey, just be careful. Like, this name, I'm seeing it around. I feel like it might end up on your caller ID.
Right.
Just fair warning.
That's it. Yeah. No, I get that call more than you'd imagine, where the community, they're much closer to the action, says, I have a feeling this person's going to figure out the common thread here, that we've all learned this from you. But if they ever call you wanting to learn from you, keep the door locked, because you don't want them in the kitchen.
It's more like keeping a virus out of the system.
And so, you got to have defense on the field all the time, Tanner.
Right.
And I don't care where it is. The defense doesn't leave the arena very often.
Right.
And but what an awesome introduction that and of course, as a theme to this, it's what the privilege is that, so somewhere back here, I got to meet Jeff and start a relationship with Jeff. And I would say, Jeff, there's no question, actually, I don't even need to think about it. I think I started coaching one-on-one with Jeff, and oh my God, if Ryan were here, he'd get it exactly right. But I'm going to say it has to be 9 or 10 years that it's been ongoing.
Right.
It's just ongoing. It's like we have that relationship. It's like a 2-seater plane, and I've been in the seat a long time, and always hope I'm bringing value, but we've got such a working relationship that it's like knives sharpening knives in the drawer. I don't know who the teacher is half the time, but to have Jeff, who in his own right is become a great teacher, primarily be responsible for teaching you, or at least that's how we met.
Right.
Right. So you've come into ping, and now the transition that I'm loving is being your coach and having had that privilege, and now watching you out there teaching.
Right.
And I want you to talk a little about that. Specifically, at least one of the opportunities of late is teaching to a Native American community that ties in two passions of, one, your heritage, and two, your love for entrepreneurship and real estate. Tell me about that a little bit.
So it comes definitely back to, like I said earlier, hoping to reconnect with the tribe, give back to the tribe more, give back to our community more. Like we were just talking about more recently, throwing the ladder back down, giving back. So there's two different places that I've taught so far. So in Portland, there's a company, I don't know if it's quite a company, but a nonprofit called NAYA, the Native American Youth and Family Association. And so they do all sorts of educational classes for all sorts of topics for people in need. It's not just real estate. But the agent that was teaching their first time homebuyer course had dropped out. And so I was able to get nominated through a mutual friend that's on the board to start teaching the first time homebuyer course there. And that's sort of the very basic 101 of like, what ducks do you need to have in a row? It's volunteer, of course, it's not paid. If you're wanting to buy your first house, what do you need to do? Like a brief overview of the steps that someone needs to take. Mm-hmm. So I've been teaching that class there, and I'm kind of angling in the hopes that I could also teach perhaps like an introduction to investing there as well.
Right.
Because those go hand in hand to me. You don't, it helps to buy the first one, but it doesn't have to, I know investing tends to be thought of as someday.
Well, maybe when your first one is a fourplex too. And
yeah, exactly.
Live in one unit.
Yeah, that would be even better.
Right.
And so there's that I've been working with. I've been working with NAYA for a little over a year now, I guess. And then my own tribe at our tribal casino, about 45 minutes north of Portland, which is sort of a middle ground for a lot of tribal members. There's a lot of tribal members in the Portland area. There's tribal members all the way up to like Seattle area. Mm-hmm. But our casino is sort of a middle ground, and everyone's familiar with it, and we have nice conference rooms there and stuff. So I've taught sort of a seller financing 101 introduction to real estate investing class there for the tribe, and I'm trying to get another one on the books, but the first one went over well.
Nice.
And we had a good turnout and a lot of good feedback from that, and actually ended up getting, it's funny how, like that circle of abundance, I held this class, on introduction to seller financing, and then I get a call from someone, well, I just got pre-qualified, to buy my first house, and I don't have an agent. So then I'm helping someone as a client. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't why I did it, but it just keeps you in the arena, keeps you growing.
Right.
So yeah, I want to lean more into, I think, education and being more of a leader that way. I tend to be pretty introverted in some ways, sort of, focused on my own little family unit. Mm-hmm. But I see the people in our community that have worked hard to be educators and thought leaders. And I can also see how that has really grown their lives and their businesses for the better. That giving back really taps into that kind of circle of abundance. And I want to reach a broader audience too, I think. So I don't know where that's going yet. That's just stuff that's in my head. But
well, I'm excited for you because you're a tactician. First is understanding it well. Second, when you do it, you have now not just understand, but you understand the meaning. It's a whole different level when you've lived it. And then, given your articulate skills, teaching it from a full body perspective.
Right.
It's not just a mind, but it's I've lived this now, and I really have it in my DNA. Now that's where I think it really starts helping people to grasp it and be enthusiastic about it. I just love, there's been a few things that this sort of falls into the same category. It's like, I have coaching students right now who the way I met this young couple was her dad was my student 20 years ago.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
So she was just a little girl.
Right.
Right. And so dad has done real well, but not, it's kind of like parents realize sometimes they can be parents, but kids might learn better from someone else.
Right.
So at about, a certain age, he sort of insisted that you now get to go to Power Players and you get to learn this.
That's awesome.
And so she did, and then she met her husband. Now they have, and actually there'll be TAs, coming up in Bend this summer. So
that's amazing.
It's almost the full circle of getting to teach students, kids. Well, in a sense, Jeff is sort of your dad in a sense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know
and
what you
so
mean.
to teach those that they've taught and said, here, now keep it going. That's always a privilege, it really is. But
it's funny how teaching makes you learn so much, as much from teaching, I swear, as that you do from studying. Because you have to, it's sort of like the difference between knowing how and knowing why.
That's exactly right.
Like, someone could know how to write a seller financing offer or know how to write like a down payment from a new loan.
Right.
But do they understand why we need to do that?
Right.
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
When you sit down to like, how am I going to explain this to someone?
Right.
Like you really have to spin it around in circles and look at it and think about it.
Well, and knowing that is why you're a great teacher, is that it's not a static view. It's not a one angle view. It's a feeling. That's what I mean by the meaning behind it is that next level of understanding. That's where it becomes your DNA, your bloodstream. You're putting it all together, and you've definitely done that. Tell me about, you mentioned Jeff as a huge influence. Tell me some books that you've read, maybe a podcast or something that you're hooked on because you really get a lot out of it. I always love here's where this came from. See, have you ever sat down to you and Emma, you got it's only 8:00.
Right.
And let's watch a movie. And then you sit there and you surf for an hour and you can't find the one because, I don't know, it looks cheesy. I'm not really sure about that. And finally you just get tired and go to bed.
Right. Yeah, I've been there.
Well, I've learned recommendations. I want to go and say, I'm watching this movie because so-and-so that I really think is awesome told me it's great.
Right.
Now I'm all in and I'm not wasting time. Books are like that, podcasts, whatever. Tell me some things that you've taken in that have been influential.
Yeah, there's a couple just recent ones that I haven't finished that really spring to mind for different reasons. And one I think you've probably heard of, and I just started it, but I sort of understand the gist of it already, which is Willpower Doesn't Work.
Have not heard of that book.
Okay, so Willpower Doesn't Work has been great for me mentally. And the idea is, I'm trying to think of an eloquent way to describe this. Like a very basic one that people would be that people would already be familiar with, like when you're dieting, rather than relying on the willpower to not eat chips in your pantry, you just throw the chips away. Mm-hmm. Well, you can apply that to so many things. Like, I don't tend to focus well on my calls at home. I need to have the willpower to turn the TV off and work from home. Well, that's not as effective as renting yourself a barren little office space where there are no distractions that you can really focus on what you're trying to do. And you can take this idea and sort of run with it with anything you want.
Yes.
But it's the idea that environment and how you set yourself up is equally or maybe more important as your willpower to do something.
Yeah.
And so that has been mentally for me, in the way I go about doing things and get myself set up for success before I even start working on something.
Right.
Very effective for me personally.
The stage of how you work best.
Yeah, even for me, a good example of this is I was spending, everyone's heard about the app TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I'm obviously of a generation. I was spending far too much time on TikTok, scrolling TikTok, hours a day, to be honest, mostly at night. But, I knew I needed to stop using it so much. Rather than relying on my willpower to
just take
use
the
it
app
less,
off your phone.
I deleted it. Yeah. And not only did I delete the app off my phone, I actually deleted my account. Mm-hmm. And that's permanent. Once I did that, it's no going back. All of the stuff I had saved, my algorithm, everything's gone.
Huh.
And so I spend a lot less time on social media now.
Yeah.
That is a great book, I feel like, especially for people who are self-employed.
I think that the part of this story that really hits me is just the vulnerability of what you just shared. Like, people don't like talking about what they consider to be a self-proclaimed, niche in their armor, but it's like golf, and we love that. Right. Like, if you got a 6. Right. Just write it down.
Yeah.
And then don't do it again.
Yeah. It doesn't do you any good to fudge the scorecard.
Right. And maybe play a little defense on that hole next time, because it's got your number, something, but the honesty is a huge part. You can't make an adjustment or do anything about it if you're lying to yourself. But then giving yourself the greatest chance to win.
Right.
Like, take distractions out of the game. Take this off the table. There. Now you've got an unobstructed and unencumbered route to home plate. Let's go.
Right. Yeah. Like, you shouldn't take a 3-iron out of the bag in a fairway bunker.
Right.
Like, not unless you're Tiger Woods. Right. Like, maybe you should reach for a hybrid here.
Right.
Or just wedge it out in the fairway and take your medicine.
Just take your medicine and keep going. Right. Yeah. Right. No, I think that's, and it's interesting that we automatically go to some golf metaphors, but I had the pleasure of recently just connecting with Bob Kleppinger, who I've known forever, down in Arizona, and we got talking. Why is he, well, my gosh, he's in his 80s now, right? Why is he such a great golfer?
Right.
And he said, well, there's been one strong suit to his game all of his life that, as he's getting older, is really serving him even more. And that's what he would call position golf. He hits away from trouble.
Right.
He doesn't get greedy at the impossible shot.
Right.
He works the hole backwards for par.
Yeah.
And occasionally gets a birdie. You know what I mean? But he works
taking double bogey out of the
I don't
picture.
need to hit a driver off this hole. I can put a 5-wood right here. And then I can hit another 5-wood to here. And then I'm a wedge in, versus driver, and I'm in trouble. And
right. I feel like taking double or triple bogey out of play right up front strategy wise. I mean, how much could we learn from that in the rest of our lives?
That's the metaphor. That's exactly what I thought of when I thought of when you're talking about this book. It's like, take trouble out of play. This is a trouble or a temptation or a weakness, or this, there's engineering here that doesn't usually work out. Take it out of play. Right.
When I was in Vegas playing golf more seriously, there was one par 5 that it was just in my head. I had a lot of 8s on that par 5. It bothered me. I wasn't confident is what it was. It was in my head. And so I found a new way to play the hole that worked for me. And it drove my coach crazy, because I was a long hitter, especially back then when I was playing all the time. And I would go hybrid 6-iron into this par 5 instead of driver 3-wood and hope to make an eagle or a birdie.
Right.
But the way the landing areas and the bunkers and the waste areas at this particular course worked out, the landing area for a 4 hybrid was huge.
Right.
So I could mishit one and still be in the fairway.
Right.
And then if I hit the 4 hybrid again, same thing. I wasn't playing the hole the way it was necessarily trying to bait me to, or the way the designer was trying to bait me to play it.
Right.
It was like, well, here's a nice open spot, and then here's a nice open spot.
Lots of
hybrid here,
room.
hybrid here.
Yes.
I've got a 6-iron into the middle of the green.
Right.
I'll have a putt for birdie, I hope. Maybe I'm chipping for birdie.
Yes.
I'm going to make par or bogey on a hole that historically terrified me.
See, to me that is where the natural entrepreneur, that we play a lot of offense.
Right.
We're proactive. We're playing a lot of offense. But this is where the defense on the field, that mental defense of knowing where to take your risks, where you feel like you can make this shot, and then others back down. A par is a good score here. Live to fight another day without messing your whole card up,
Yeah, and sometimes
I'm trying to get better at that.
Yeah. No, me too. And there's some days where like sometimes even learning and listening to yourself where like even if it's a shot you've hit before, I've learned to listen to myself where if I get over the ball and I've got a 3-iron in my hand or a 4-iron in my hand and I just can't get comfortable for whatever reason, even if it's a shot I know I can hit, like once I've already had this conscious realization that I'm not comfortable over this shot, I'm far better off just backing off, put the club back in the bag, and rethink this completely. And decide on a shot, you're like, okay, I'm comfortable with that.
The hesitation in your mind is going to find its way through all of a sudden this isn't muscle memory anymore. Yeah. This is, I'm pushing something that I'm forcing something here. And that never makes for a good shot.
Rare, yeah. Maybe 1 in 5 might be okay, but it's not a good idea.
Well, these metaphors are beautiful because I really, the language of our audience, and this is at least one, you know golf so much better than I do, but we do love and share the same sport. But I really think that back to this book and some of the changes you've made, it's giving yourself the best chance to score. Right?
It does come back to that.
And if we want the best chance to score, right? If we really are serious about that, then it's a combination of being aggressive, but knowing when you've got to play the smart game on certain places. So, to me, the more tools you have, the more choices you have of how to go about that.
Right.
That's where.
When speaking of like a golf business crossover metaphor, I think this is Ben Hogan, but he always said that it was the golfer who missed the best that won. Because he's like, golf is a game of misses.
Right.
And he's like, if I miss better than you, I'm going to win the game.
Right.
Well, thinking about that in terms of real estate, like if you have a backup plan for a flip,
right,
or 2 backup plans for a flip in case things go sideways,
right.
Maybe it was a miss, maybe it wasn't the best flip,
right.
I missed better than the guy who went into foreclosure.
How'd that flip go? Well, it was a good miss.
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't write a check to sell it.
Right.
I'm not in foreclosure.
Right, exactly. The hard money lender didn't make all the money and I'm out. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. No, I think a good miss sometimes is some of the best victories because, I liken a lot of things to aviation and the redundant system. Right. You almost plan for if this doesn't work, if this goes out, now what?
Right.
Okay, now this is where we go. This is how you'll still get there with this instrument or with
it's
this.
Not pessimism. It's like we just said earlier. It's setting yourself up to score.
That's it.
Because if you're not creating a strategy that has that redundancy, then scoring becomes almost luck.
Yes. Right. No. Well. And that's where some people hate watching pro golf on TV because they go, oh, it's so boring.
Oh, I've played in Monday qualifiers. You wouldn't believe how boring it is to watch professionals move around a course. It's undramatic.
Right.
They don't aim at the flag very rarely.
Right.
I mean, meat of the green, 2 putts.
Fairway, meat of the green, 2 putt, next hole. It's like, did you guys do something exciting here? It's just boring almost.
That's why people love to watch Tiger because he was so dramatic. Or Phil, because Phil was the guy who was going to go for it.
Right.
But I've seen way, way more weekend warriors go for hero shots than I ever did pro golfers. Maybe that's another metaphor.
We're going to title this one, The Golf Metaphor. Oh, man. Tanner, I think it's all adding up for you. And, of course, with your bride and with Jet, you have to be thinking. You're not a kid anymore. You have to be thinking in terms of the final finish line. Like, as you're reverse engineering your life, of course, we never know when the end is. What do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known as? This is who Tanner was all about.
Yeah, I think I need to spend more time reflecting on this. I am in that sort of middle chapter now that I'm in my 30s. I think I've spent more time thinking about like the second chapter. I feel like I just closed the first chapter. Like I turned 30. I got to maybe where the good point where the portfolio's at sort of a holding pattern where the dust settled, as we've talked about, and I can kind of plan the next phase. We've got some transitions coming up. So I've spent a lot more time thinking about this sort of middle chapter than the last chapter. That being said, in the short, and not to be a cliche, like if someone was going to remember me, I'd love if they remembered a kind person, someone who made them feel maybe a little bit taller, someone who encouraged them, made them believe in themselves more. I want to be someone who's thought of as inspirational, not because of what I've achieved or anything like that, but someone who was always ready with like a kind word, some encouragement, maybe some education, someone that really just made them feel good, made them believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. Whoever that is, I want to feel like a positive influence. And I've certainly made mistakes in the past and, not been that for people, but I'm working on that. I want to be that person for people where, like a name I could throw out. He's been on the show, that anyone in the community, God, whoever left a room with Robert Boygan didn't feel better.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You spend time with that guy and you leave the room and you feel 2 inches taller.
Yeah.
He believes that you could become president of the United States if you said that's what you wanted to do.
Right.
Like, I don't know. It's just, I want to be that for everyone else. And, you've been so inspiring for me. Jeff's been so inspiring for me. My parents have been inspiring for me. I've had so unbelievably lucky in terms of role models and people to push me to be better, to inspire me, that I want to be that for other people. I don't want to list it in terms of like how many, God, I hate those conversations when it's how many doors do you want to own? What's your net worth goal? And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, man?
Right.
That's not what I want.
Yeah. I thought about that when I was 18, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Not since I've been about 20.
Yeah, exactly. Like how close do you stand to the urinal?
Right.
So that's that's how I think about it. I think for now is more of an impression of how I've made people feel.
Well, I think that's what makes you one of the great ones, buddy. And that's why it's a privilege to have you here. Your influence and the impact you're making just by being you. I think that's the ultimate legacy, is when it's sort of it doesn't even look intentional. It's just you being who you are is making that kind of difference. And I can tell you are, as is Robert, as is Jeff, as is Manny. I mean, I could go down the line. They're just living an example that people make them feel taller, bigger. And that's what it's all about. So, buddy,
people aren't going to remember how many houses I bought.
Right, right.
Like no one cares.
Right.
Like, they'll remember how I made them feel.
Yeah. It honestly isn't the currency that anybody's going to remember. But helping people do for themselves so that they can do for others.
Right.
I think that comes back to why. Why do you do what you do? Well, you've got your family first and foremost. That's
these
why
moments right here. We're here. We're in one.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And this big family. I think that this is such an awesome little precursor to the day. Tonight, we're among those that I just feel honored to, as I know you do, that we're going to get to show up at a pregame gathering of power players only tonight, and I know there's going to be 100 of them there.
Right.
And there'll be like 300 at the whole event tomorrow, but 100 of them are close and friends, which, it's like, it's not where you'd want to have a bar fight if you didn't like me, because it wouldn't go well for somebody.
If you fight the quarterback, you fight the whole team.
We got backing, they won't break out in a fight, but you know what I mean? It's that I feel a part of something much bigger than me, which I feel that. I physically feel that. It's that strength of being in and around people that are your advocates and you are theirs. What a difference, you know? So no, we're going to have a great time tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So, well, brother, thank you for making the drive. And for everybody watching, I want you to tell people, Tanner, and be careful about this, but tell the world, this isn't just power players watching, but tell the world how to stay in touch with you, how to contact you. What medium is that reasonable if you're up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, me being a real estate agent, I'm easy to find. You could Google my name, Tanner Chambers. Cell phone's okay. I can just if anyone wants to chat, 503-593-8064. Instagram's the only social media I still use. TH Chambers is my username on there, so that's easy to look me up. I don't post a lot of vanity stuff on there, but I'm there. So anyone that wants to reach out, I love brainstorming this kind of stuff or just talking shop philosophy. I would love to.
Give me the cell one more time.
Cell phone, 503-593-8064.
That is the most convoluted number I've ever heard in my life.
There's no repeated numbers
I was
in there.
going to say, God, could we have 2 in a row, please, or something? You know, you can tell my brain dead mind. All 7s for me. Just keep it simple. Oh, buddy, thanks again for being here and for joining us on this podcast. We so appreciate it. And of course, you know how to run me down if I can be of any help. And until next time, God bless.